You think you've seen it all when it comes to Kody Brown and his so-called favorite wife, Robyn. But the truth? It's more complicated, far messier, than what the polished family narratives have ever dared to show. And tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. Visualize for an instant, not the staged smiles or the practiced love, but Kody's intimate words regarding Robyn. Words so real, so off the cuff, they would take even the most devoted sister wives viewers aback. Not tender murmurs of devotion, but of the type that strip away the polished veneer and reveal to you what has actually been seething beneath the surface for years. These are not rumors. These are actual moments, actual fallout, that left the other wives in shock, the children quietly questioning, and the viewers everywhere wondering the same thing. How much of this narrative has been in plain sight? Hey guys, welcome to Sister Wives Daily, where we look beyond the headlines and into the heart of what's actually going on within the Brown family. If you've ever felt something was wrong with Kody and Robyn, if you've seen the tension that no family meeting could resolve, then this, right here, is your moment. Be sure to subscribe and unleash your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know what you've caught. Because tonight, we're not just retelling old drama. We're diving into the real story, the words, the events, the emotional unraveling that's been building quietly, episode by episode, for over a decade. The minute Robyn entered the frame, all bets were off. Her introduction wasn't a mere surprise, it was the turning point. You could tell in Kody's eyes the first time he introduced her. The softening of his tone, the shining just from being in her presence, it was different, and it wasn't missed. Meri, Janelle, Christine, they knew how to split Kody's time, his attention, his affection. It wasn't always easy, but they had a system. And then Robyn came along, and suddenly, the balance shifted. Even as far back as those first episodes, you could sense the change. Kody wasn't merely interested, he was smitten. He'd drive for hours just to hang out with Robyn, bring presents, fawn over her at every opportunity. There's that infamous scene where he confesses to being Twitter-pated, hopelessly in love, and you can literally see Christine's heart sink right there before your eyes. Meri did her best to remain strong, all goodness and righteousness as the loyal first wife, but beneath her smile, you could sense the creeping loneliness. Janelle, the reliable, down-to-earth one, started to draw back, keeping busy with her children, her career, her freedom. And the preferential treatment, not exactly covert. Kody began to break rotation, staying extra nights at Robyn's. He jumped to her defense in family disagreements, even when the other wives were visibly upset. Who can forget the wedding dress shopping? Kody was beaming, nearly radiating joy, while the rest of the family stood by watching, their feelings thinly disguised. And Christine, she felt it worst. She'd been the glue, the one who made birthdays special, holidays magical, the kids happy. But Kody's eye was no longer on her. And when his attention wavered, so did Christine's sense of self-worth. There's a scene, one of the saddest in the show, where she softly says to the camera, "I feel like a basement wife. Always present, always loving, but never in the spotlight." This wasn't about one new wife alone. It was about a family disintegrating, one quiet fissure at a time. That moment struck me, and I know I'm not alone in feeling it. So go ahead and ask yourself, did you see the transition when Robyn came into the picture? Did you see the way Kody's eyes began to focus on her, and the rest of the family shifted into the background? Share your thoughts in the comments, because what we're about to dive into next, that's when things really begin to come apart. Robyn's ascendancy in Kody's affections didn't revolutionize their marriage alone, it transformed the entire family. And the consequences? They were just starting. Kody's method of handling his wives has never been simple, but since Robyn joined the fray, the emotional distance, the emotional manipulation, it all became impossible to ignore. If you pay close attention to the show, you begin to notice the pattern. Kody takes little, subtle moves to keep everyone just a bit off center. One minute he's critiquing one wife in front of the group. The next, he's behind closed doors criticizing another. It's emotional triangulation textbook. Keep the wives vying for your affection, and no one's got time to question the larger issue. Christine bore the brunt of that more than anyone. There's a scene that still resonates, when she gets real about never feeling first on Kody's list, no matter how much she sacrifices. She gives her all to hold the family together, and as a return, Kody remains aloof. He won't show affection, seldom gives true appreciation. And when Christine finally demands more, he behaves like she's the issue, like demanding love is wrong. It's agonizing to see. You can watch her grasping at her identity, her strength, her self-esteem, while Kody keeps moving the goalposts, over and over. And then there's Janelle. She's always been the independent one, the eye of the hurricane. But Kody's absence, his emotional lack of availability, brought her further into that independence. There's one point where she says she's used to doing everything on her own, raising the kids, taking care of her home, getting along without looking to him for anything. It's not that she doesn't love him, it's that she's learned not to look for things from someone who never actually shows up. And Meri's saga is tragic in its own way. She was the first, the one who constructed this whole life with Kody from scratch. But after Robyn came along, Meri's bond to him faded into something superficial. What did Kody provide for her instead? A friendship with Robyn, one that was more of a scripted play than something genuine. Remember those moments? Meri and Robyn, shopping, laughing, pretending to be best friends for the cameras. But beneath that facade, you could sense it, Meri so desperately wanting to fit in, wanting to be close to Kody by being close to Robyn. But the entire setup just didn't ring true, like something Kody felt like he had to believe in, rather than something that brought either woman any genuine sense of peace. And that's why these scenes are so moving, because it's not reality TV soap opera, it's real. It's women, real women, struggling to hold on to love, to connection, in a world where the rules keep shifting. Kody's dominance is not always vocal. Sometimes it's the silence, the withdrawal, the distance he takes when someone pushes back. And then, just when you're about to lose hope, he'll drop a little love, just enough to keep them holding on. If you've ever found yourself in that space, fighting for someone's attention, hoping to be noticed, feeling like love was something you earned, you know how draining that can be. Have you ever caught yourself in Christine's heartache, in Janelle's independence, in Meri's unassuming yearning? Have you ever felt like you were on the periphery, waiting to be included? Share with me in the comments, because this is the part of Sister Wives that resonates with so many of us. And then there was the pandemic, a force that shook not just the world, but shattered every broken thread the Browns were struggling to keep intact. Suddenly, the fractures were no longer hidden. They were staring us in the face. The cracks weren't concealed any longer. They stood wide open, raw and exposed for all to see. As the pandemic rolled in, it didn't merely disturb everyday life. It laid bare the fault lines of the Brown family that had been quietly developing over several years. Kody's regulations tightened, his expectations more cumbersome, and the pressure he put on his wives, it boiled over. He required compliance. No questions asked. No exceptions made. Just comply with his procedures and get in line. But every wife, every woman, had her own moral compass, her own idea of what was important. And for Christine, that moment of recognition occurred when her daughter Isabel required back surgery. The arrangement was straightforward. Christine would bring Isabel to New Jersey for the procedure. What wasn't straightforward was Kody's response. He wouldn't go. He said it was too dangerous, too much risk. His so-called COVID rules took precedence. Seeing Christine struggling to explain that to her daughter, it was heartbreaking. Isabel's face told everything. The heartbreak, the astonishment, the terrible realization that her father had prioritized rules over standing beside her. Christine bore it all by herself, and in that moment, something within her snapped. She glanced around and saw the truth. She had been going it solo, emotionally, physically, spiritually, for years. And suddenly, she couldn't continue to lie to herself anymore. She didn't want to continue to pretend this was love. Janelle had her own reckoning. Kody demanded she decide, his strict rule or her children who were popping in and out from college and jobs. Janelle did not blink. Her kids were first, no debate. She said to Kody that she would not evict her sons for his sake. That was a still moment, but it was a strong one. She wasn't defending only her kids. She was taking back her voice. For Janelle, who had never valued anything more than her independence, it was not rebellion. It was about principles. She had spent decades settling, but now, she was making a stand. She would not give up on her relationship with her children for a man who showed up at barely half the time. And so, as the world stood still, the Brown family broke. The pandemic imposed decisions, tough ones. And for the first time, the wives began choosing themselves. Kody's hold on the family, already strained, started to break. He attempted to regain control. He doubled down on regulation. He demanded family meetings, begging for cohesion. But the more he pushed, the more they drifted away. The regime they had lived under, the rotation of nights, holiday sharing, and enforced togetherness, broke apart. And in the aftermath, there was a silent revolution. Individual wives for themselves, their own space, their own peace, their own definition of contentment. You could look at their faces. Christine's weariness, Janelle's frustration, the kids' sadness. But also something new bubbling up under all that pain, a kind of freedom, a strength, the understanding that they didn't have to keep bowing down for someone who wouldn't bow down for them. For the first time, the dynamic changed. Kody was no longer the focal point. The wives weren't circling him anymore. They were standing independently and opting for peace instead of chaos. And then arrived the money. Finances were always the Brown family's sore subject. But today, the silent tensions transformed into boisterous, awkward realities. The dream of developing at Coyote Pass, this magnificent concept that was to bring them closer together, only showed them just how far apart they were. Whenever money was mentioned, you could sense the tension smother the room. Kody would talk of high visions, new homes, property, large investments. But in real life, that was a different story. The family was stretched thin, and not everyone saw eye to eye on what the money was to be spent on, or who it was actually helping. Robyn's spending was a lightning rod. On TV, she'd speak of requiring a nanny, furniture, shopping, dropping hints about her retail therapy fondness. And then there was that now famous moment, the $60,000 doll collection. For viewers, it turned into a meme, a joke, but to the other wives, it wasn't funny. It was infuriating. As Robyn and Kody played house in their new, well-decorated home, the rest of them were left trying to keep their heads above water. Meri was subdued, but you could sense her solitude. Christine was struggling with emotional burnout. And Janelle, she said it directly, she felt like she was beginning again, from scratch. Kody's entrepreneurial efforts, random, sporadic, didn't work either. He boasted, but the payoff was often short of the hype. And the more that money conversation came up, the more it revealed an ugly reality. This wasn't a single family with a single vision. It was many women, in many homes, all struggling to make it through their own reality. Kody would refer to his business graveyard, a lengthy list of businesses that never seemed to materialize, grand plans, big enthusiasm, but no execution. While he fantasied, the women worked. Meri dedicated herself to operating her bed and breakfast, working to make it something of her own. Janelle leaned into health coaching, making a niche for herself. Christine was building quietly, too, working to create stability for her children and for herself. They weren't hustling, they were surviving. Because the financial burden, it was genuine. And as the emotional ties within the household started to disintegrate, so did whatever remained of the joint finances. When Christine walked out, she set boundaries. No more joint accounts. No more waiting for permission. She made it unmistakable. This time, she was calling the shots. Her life wasn't going to be planned by Kody or Robyn. She was finished playing according to rules that seemed to suit someone else. And then there was social media, the location where all of this came to a head. Fans began to see the difference. Photos of Robyn and Kody shopping, walking through designer stores, lounging in a new home. Where is the money coming from? People wondered. Janelle was online, discussing budgeting and simple living. Christine was cheering on new business successes and posting from her humble, joyful environment. The difference couldn't be overlooked anymore. Kody was always drawn to the face of wealth, the cars, the hair, the schemes that never fully became reality. Robyn shared the same. A gorgeous house, carefully selected furnishings, the ideal existence on the exterior. Behind it, though, the cracks were expanding. The other wives had had enough pretending, had had enough of observing their sacrifices being used to bankroll another person's lifestyle. The financial soap opera was not about who spent money on what, about power, respect, and who really got a say in determining the future. The disintegration of the Brown family wasn't dramatic, at least not at first. It wasn't a huge blow-up. It was a slow burn, a long sorrow, a silent breakup that played itself out week after week in front of an audience of millions. Christine's departure was the moment that it all became irrepressible. She had attempted. For years, she attempted. She smiled past disappointment. She kept the family afloat. But when Kody wouldn't show up for Isabel's surgery, after years of invisibility, she spoke the words that irreparably changed everything. Enough. Seeing her pack that house, seeing her leave behind a life she had built with her own two hands, it was visceral, real, emotional. She gazed into the camera and announced, "I just can't do marriage with Kody anymore." And in her tone, there was pain, but also peace. She wasn't walking away from a man. She was leaving behind a story she no longer believed. Janelle's path was not as sensational but just as mighty. The silent wife, the one who never said, "I can handle this." But as Kody's absence increased and his demands wrapped tighter around her, she ceased waiting for things to shift. She began making a different way. There's a moment, a plain but indelible one, when she meets his gaze and says, "I'm not going to choose between you and my children." That was her line in the sand, her declaration, her transition from existing to living. She began making independent plans, discussing life on the road in an RV, brainstorming business ideas, creating something just for her. And with every move, she edged closer to freedom. But Meri's narrative could be the most difficult to endure. She was the first, the most believing one. She had the very first dream of plural marriage in her possession. But after the catfishing debacle, and after the years of estrangement between her and Kody, she was left utterly alone. Those moments of her, sitting in silence, scrolling through moments, seeking meaning in her friendships and business, are among the most painful of the entire series. Kody left little space for hope. He made it plain, he didn't envision a future with her, and Meri was left standing amidst the wreckage, deciding whether to continue clinging or at last release. And that's what her tale became, to let go of something that no longer is, even when it still stings. To learn to value herself independently of a man's admiration, independently of a script from family. These tales, Christine's bravery, Janelle's boundaries, Meri's heartache, they're not simply about love lost. They're about resilience gained. They're about what occurs when women cease waiting for someone to rescue them and rescue themselves instead. Because maybe you've been there too, feeling stuck, overlooked, like your needs are too much, your voice too quiet, your worth too invisible. If that's you, you're not alone. Tell your story in the comments. Because this community, it's not just about watching the drama on screen, it's about growth, learning, and supporting one another. It's about reminding ourselves and one another that we all deserve love, respect, and a second chance. But we cannot discuss the Brown family without discussing the cameras. There was TLC always rolling, all the stressful moments, all the cries, all the awkward family gatherings, recorded. Yes, the show made the wives visible. A payment. A soapbox, but at a price. Private agony became public entertainment. The need to provide drama, to reveal the most private, personal agonies for entertainment, only widened the fissures. And it wasn't only the grown-ups. The children were raised with their lives aired to millions. Their adolescent angst, their sorrow, their bewilderment on display for humanity. Some of them have begun to open up. About needing privacy. About being caught in the middle of parents. About not wanting to continue doing the same things they grew up with. It raises a question, one that's difficult to push aside. When does reality television stop being a form of storytelling and begin to become exploitation? How much of the Browns' suffering was prolonged, perhaps even exacerbated by the obligation to keep people watching? Because behind the headlines, behind the edits and the cliffhangers are human beings, living through actual heartache. We owe them and ourselves something better than curiosity. We owe compassion, empathy, a moment before we judge, because this isn't television. These are human beings attempting to heal. Let's keep this space real in its honesty and compassion. Let it be a space where stories are greeted with empathy, not shame, where we learn from what we see and think about our own stories as well. The story of the Browns is messy, it's painful. At times, it's almost too raw to watch, but it's also powerful. Because in that mess, we've seen resilience. We've seen women rise after being broken. We've seen what it means to walk away from what no longer serves you and step into the unknown with trembling but determined steps. If you've ever felt ignored, dismissed, stuck in a life that doesn't feel like yours anymore, you're not alone. Thanks for being here, for listening, for caring, for being on this journey with me. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. I read every single one. We're creating something here, a community of actual people having actual conversations. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, choosing yourself isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning.